Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair Graham. Senator Chatz, welcome to your new role. I look forward to working with both of you. Secretary Rubio, I am deeply concerned that you have overseen a systemic campaign to dismantle USAID, impound billions of dollars that this committee actually provided, and unilaterally remake the Department of State without the slightest bit of concern that you lack the authority to do that without Congress. It has created chaos, it's caused preventable deaths across the globe, and it has undermined American leadership.
This story is like a big classroom argument, but instead of kids, it's senators and a secretary. One side is very angry, saying the other broke the rules, wasted money, and made a big mess. Let's break it down step by step.
As Ranking Member Schatz noted, what you've done is outright illegal, complete violation of bipartisan appropriation laws, the Impoundment Control Act, and the Anti-Deficiency Act. Within hours of taking office, President Trump halted all foreign aid in flagrant defiance of the law. Now, under your watch, Secretary Rubio, that freeze was implemented with chaos and cruelty. And then you illegally shuttered USAID, placing everyone on leave, halting life-saving work, literally locking people out of the building and out of their devices, even in dangerous corners of our world. You paid people not to work, abandoned our partners across the globe, and chaotically recalled global staff, putting more than 1,600 Americans who served our country abroad in limbo. And when you shut down the USAID payment system, you even refused to pay for services provided before the illegal freeze. You fought all the way to the Supreme Court, against paying for services U.S. businesses already rendered with funding that Congress already provided. And I know you know, Mr. Secretary, but you lost. And I assume you need the reminder because to this day, you have not made all the payments that are required by our nation's highest court, and as a result, American companies continue to lay off American workers. And by the way, you do continue to lose in court, including just yesterday over your move to illegally replace the U.S. Institute of Peace Leadership, and in recent cases over international broadcasting. Now, eventually, Mr. Secretary, you sent Congress notice of your intent to collapse the USAID in state. Only you didn't consult with this committee. That's required by law. It came without justification, also required by law, and it came long after USAID was reduced to rubble. So sadly, disregard for our laws and values to me has sort of become a pattern of your tenor, revoking visas when someone writes an op-ed you don't like, or reaching a secret deal to use taxpayer dollars to jail U.S. residents in a notorious foreign prison, no due process, or pointlessly leaving food assistance to rot in storage. Actually, in Dubai, we now have 500 tons of high-energy biscuits that expire in July. They're bought, they're shipped, they're stored, all at taxpayer expense. But you've condemned them to waste, and that is one example of many. Now, another pattern that I'm deeply worried about is transparency. We have pressed you for information. Our staffs have sent you countless emails and briefing requests so we can do our job here. There are hundreds of unanswered requests and no effort to address them. And Mr. Secretary, that's got to change. Even your plan to reorganize the State Department came with no information on the 270 offices you are moving to eliminate, the proposed layoffs, or how USAID would be merged into state. I won't ask you whether impounding billions of dollars is legal. It is not. I won't ask you whether it's efficient to pay people not to work or fire them without determining staffing needs. But I won't ask you if cutting 91% of our counter-narcotic and law enforcement programs make us safer, abruptly abandoning agreements with allies makes us stronger, or ceding our global leadership to China makes us more prosperous. Of course not. We know that. We have worked together for years in a bipartisan way to advance U.S. interests and fund those programs. So with respect to my colleagues, how long are we going to sit here and watch this silently? Are we going to roll over as Trump tramples our laws and undermines our U.S. leadership, burns down what we have spent decades building, and let millions of people across our globe suffer and die? or are we going to stand up, push back, assert our constitutional power of the purse? And to my colleagues on both sides, this is the moment to decide whether this committee continues to be a powerful bipartisan force, a force that I think we've all been proud of for a very long time, force that is focused on safety and economic strength and national security, focused on leading the world in research and development and countering China and others with our soft power and our military power. Every single member of this committee knows what we are risking by letting this administration tear down so much. On USAID and other programs, we can always talk about how we can make things work better and other reforms. I don't think any of us are opposed to any of those considerations. We have been doing that in a bipartisan way for a long time. But that's not actually what Trump's fiscal year 2026 budget proposes. Mr. Secretary, I know you would like to give a 5-minute speech back to me, but I only have a few seconds left, and I do need some information from you. As I said, we have asked and have not gotten. Can you tell me, will you share the text and details with my staff of your agreement with El Salvador and any other similar arrangements, including the funding details that we need to have?
Well, first, I'd like to respond to your 7-minute speech, which is primarily, I disagree like 99% of it. It's just not true. We've done nothing that's illegal. We've been in over 600 briefings to Congress. We've asked questions. We've answered questions repeatedly. We get hundreds of questions a day. We respond them as quickly as possible. And your characterization of the moves that we've
Mr. Secretary, I would just tell you, we are here because we need the information so that we can write our budget and on a bipartisan.
Well, you'll have the information you need to write a budget.
Okay, so will we get the details on the El Salvador arrangement? Yes or no?
For which Salvador arrangement?
Your agreement that you've made with them about.
On what agreement? The president of El Salvador agreed to take in 250 gangbangers, and
funding details we have not gotten. We need to see what the costs are.
Well, we haven't funded that. We've provided them law enforcement assistance. I know you just claimed that we cut all this law enforcement assistance. We provided El Salvador and other countries law enforcement assistance. They have the right to spend that money any way they wish. But they did us a big favor. They took 250 dangerous trained out. We didn't deport any U.S. residents. No U.S. residents.
I'm not going to argue with you on that.
Well, it's not an argument, but don't say we deported U.S. residents because we didn't. I don't deport anybody.
I'm not asking.
But we didn't deport U.S. residents.
I'm asking you whether we can see the details of the arrangements, including the funding details.
I'm giving you the details. The arrangements are we provide law enforcement funding to El Salvador, among other countries. How they choose to spend that money in
I take that as a no. How
about, I can tell you.
Can you give me the details on the 200-plus offices you're proposing to
Sure, we
eliminate?
provided that.
We need that. Can I get your commitment to give it to us?
It's part of our reorg.
How about the details and justifications of your proposed rescissions from programs you claim are out of alignment with administration priorities? Are we going to get the details of that, funding priorities?
On rescissions and empowerment and things of this nature, that's obviously an OMB function, and I would talk to them about that in regard to what's going to go on with that money. I can tell you the contracts we canceled, and I can list to you the contracts we canceled and the rationale why, because I went through.
Can you get those to us like today's
contracts?
Yes, and the funding arrangements that you've made. That's what I'm asking for.
Funding arrangements with who?
For any of the rescissions, for any of the funding, for any of the multiple congressional directives that you have given out so that we as an appropriations committee can make our funding decisions.
Sure, you're going to have all that information when you put together a budget.
Thank you. I enjoyed that.
She said what Secretary Rubio did was illegal. It broke bipartisan spending laws, the Empowerment Control Act, and the Anti-Deficiency Act. She explained that when Trump became president, he stopped all foreign aid right away, ignoring the law. Under Rubio, this freeze became even more messy and cruel. He shut down USAID, sent workers home, and stopped important life-saving projects. People were locked out of their offices and computers, even in dangerous places. The government paid people to do nothing, left partners around the world hanging, and pulled hundreds of American workers back, leaving them stuck. When the payment system was shut down, Rubio even refused to pay for work that had already been done. He took the fight all the way to the Supreme Court because he didn't want to pay businesses, even though Congress had already given the money. But he lost that case. And even after losing, he still hasn't made all the required payments. Because of this, American companies are laying off workers. He also keeps losing in other courts, like the one about illegally replacing the U.S. Institute of Peace Leadership and about international broadcasting. Eventually, Rubio told Congress he wanted to mix USAID into the State Department. But he didn't talk to the committee first, which he had to by law. He didn't give any reasons either, also required by law. And he waited until USAID was already ruined. The senator said that ignoring laws has become a pattern with him. She gave examples: taking away visas from people who wrote things he didn't like, secretly using taxpayer money to jail U.S. residents in a foreign prison, and letting food rot in storage. She mentioned 500 tons of high-energy biscuits in Dubai that will expire in July. These were bought, shipped, and stored with taxpayer money, but they're going to waste. She said this was just one example of many. Another big problem she pointed out was a lack of honesty and openness. She said they had asked Rubio for information many times. Staff had sent hundreds of emails and requests, but they didn't get answers. She told him this must change. She explained that even his plan to reorganize the State Department gave no info about the 270 offices he wanted to remove, who would lose their jobs, or how USAID would fit into the new plan. She said she wouldn't bother asking him if taking billions of dollars illegally was right, because it's not. She wouldn't ask if paying people to not work was smart, because it's not. She wouldn't ask if cutting programs that help fight crime made America safer, because of course it doesn't. She explained that both parties had worked together for years to support these programs. She then asked her fellow senators, how long will they just sit and watch as Trump breaks the law and weakens America? Will they stay silent, or will they stand up and defend the Constitution and America's leadership? She reminded everyone that this committee has always been a strong, bipartisan force, focused on safety, the economy, security, research, and leadership. Everyone knows what they risk if they let the Trump administration tear down USAID and other programs. She said they can talk about reforms to make things better. That's fine, but that's not what Trump's budget is trying to do. She then told Rubio she didn't have much time left and needed answers to some questions they had already asked. She asked Rubio to share details about his agreement with El Salvador, including funding information. Rubio responded that he disagreed with almost everything she said. He claimed they did nothing illegal and had held over 600 briefings. He said they answered many questions every day and that her description of events was wrong. She repeated that they needed the information to make the budget. He said they would get it. She asked again about the El Salvador agreement, where the president of El Salvador agreed to take in 250 gang members. She said they hadn't received funding details. Rubio said they hadn't funded that directly, but had given El Salvador law enforcement assistance, and that country could spend it however they wanted. He said El Salvador did them a favor by taking those people, and that they didn't deport any U.S. residents. He told her not to say they did, because that wasn't true. She asked again if they could get the details of the 200-plus offices being affected. Rubio said they had provided that already and promised to share information about canceled contracts and why. She asked for those details that day, along with information on all funding decisions and changes, so the committee could make proper budget choices. Rubio replied that they would have all the information when they worked on the budget.